The good news is that I think we've set a record beyond all records for fundraising. That's like a poll.
Well, President Trump from an exclusive interview with Fox and Friends this weekend on how the guilty verdict against him in the New York hush money trial has led to a flood of new contributions into the tens of millions to his presidential election campaign. Somebody who's campaigning with him joining us now, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Welcome back, Senator.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk about this. The Republican spin on this has been it's going to motivate your base, that angry voters are motivated voters, and they are angry about this verdict. But Politico adds this, saying Trump simply cannot beat President Joe Biden, relying solely on the votes of people who think his legal travails are a politically motivated scam. Trump's only path to victory is a coalition that includes many Republicans and independents who find him deplorable, but think a second Biden term would be even more so. So what is the plan from President Trump to reach out to people who may not love him at this point? Maybe some Nikki Haley voters, independents, others who are skeptics. Other than the grievances, what about campaigning on policy and reaching out to those folks directly?
Yeah, Shannon, there's no doubt that this verdict has actually brought unifying our party. Without any question, what we've seen is never Trumpers calling me and saying, Tim, I'm on the bandwagon now. I've seen this two-tier justice system working against the President of the United States. It could work against me, too. I've seen donors who've been on the sidelines this entire process now jumping in. One of the reasons why we saw more than $50 million raised in 24 hours. But you're 100% right. The issues that are going to drive the results of this November 5th election will be, can Donald Trump close the southern border? The answer is he already has closed the southern border. Can he bring inflation down under 2%? The answer is it was 1.4% when he left office. Can he create jobs for the poorest Americans? Good news is he created more than 7 million jobs, with the highest percentage going to women, African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians. What we know about 4 years under Donald Trump is we had low unemployment, low inflation, high enthusiasm, law and order in our streets, and we've had the exact opposite under Joe Biden. We've had incredibly crushing inflation, leading to high interest rates, crime in the poorest communities, devastating single mothers like the one that raised me, and we've had the greatest invasion in American history across our southern border, left wide open, unsafe, because Joe Biden on day one started unraveling border security put in place by Donald Trump.
Yeah, and we get word that he may be possibly reinstituting some of that this week, given the reality of what's happening there. Now, you sound like somebody who would be campaigning with the president potentially on the ticket. The betting websites all have you in the #1 slot, potentially to be VP. You and Doug Burgum going back and forth this week. But one of the issues where it seems like there may be a split with you and President Trump is this issue of abortion. Back when you were campaigning in Iowa, when you were running for the nomination, you name-checked him and others who you felt would not set a limit, some type of federal ban. President Trump has said now that he's not going to sign a federal ban. This is to be left to the states. Mike Pence said this when that news came out. He said President Trump's retreat on the right to life is a slap in the face to the millions of pro-life Americans who voted for him. A majority of Americans long to see minimum national protections for the unborn in federal law. But today, too many Republican politicians are all too ready to wash their hands of the battle for life. I know you are passionate about this, and we have talked about the fact that there are states that do not have a limit on abortion up to a due date. Are you willing to concede that position, or would you fight to push President Trump, if you're his vice president, to reconsider that federal ban that I know you care so much about?
Well, Shannon, you're 100% right that the Democrats, Republicans are all pro-life, honestly. And the Democrats in the Senate have already voted to allow for abortions up until the day of birth. But it goes beyond that. The former governor of Virginia, a pediatrician Democrat, said perhaps even infanticide is okay. I find that amoral. Without question, however, the Supreme Court has already ruled that this is a state's issue. President Trump and Speaker Johnson have both said that this will remain a state's issue. It is consistent with the Supreme Court, and we must make sure that we allow the American people to see the absolute extreme position of insanity on the left and a states' rights issue on the right.
But knowing that you feel that's so extreme, wouldn't you want to at least have a conversation? Do you think that President Trump, who respects you, would listen to you on this issue if you're going to say there are states out there that have no limit whatsoever? I mean, you're saying that Democrats have a terrible position, but if they do, wouldn't you want to limit it in some way?
I can just tell you the voters have spoken. I ran for president and they said, not now. So the voters of our party want President Trump leading the party. They have been embracing his position on the state's position of letting communities decide the issue of abortion. That is a settled issue for our party. And frankly, it is one that takes that issue off the table for the Democrats, who have the most extreme position on abortion.
Okay, well, we'll see if you join that ticket formally. If you have any news, come back and let us know. Senator, always good to see you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Shannon.
All right, joining us now, California Congressman and Democrat Ro Khanna. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Shannon. Always good to be on.
Okay, so let's start here. Politico said this week after a new round of polls that Democrats are in full-blown freak-out mode over President Biden. A pervasive sense of fear has settled in at the highest levels of the Democratic Party over his re-election prospects, even among office holders and strategists who had previously expressed confidence about the coming battle with Donald Trump. Are you one of the Democrats freaking out?
I'm not, Shannon. The last 20 years, this country, the national elections are always very close. They're usually decided by a few percent in a few states. This is going to be a very, very close election. And I think that's what Democrats recognize, that it's a hard-fought battle. We have to have a better economic vision in showing what we're going to do to improve people's lives.
So on the economic front, let me read you a headline from yesterday. This is an opinion piece. It said, Trump isn't the reason why Biden is down in the polls. Inflation is. They add, what's really killing President Biden is experienced by every voter every day. Things cost too much. One Democratic strategist who's worked on presidential campaigns said this: if the frame of this race is what was better, the 3.5 years under Biden or 4 years under Trump, we lose that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. As flawed a candidate as I'm sure you think President Trump is, a poll after poll shows us the economic reality for people at home is swaying them in his direction.
I don't think the frame is who did a better job in the past. It's who's going to do a better job in the future. And yes, the reality is that prices are high. Prices are high for eggs, for milk, for gas. But the question is, who's going to make a difference on that? The President Biden has an actual plan to reduce child care costs, to reduce housing costs, to take on the concentration of large grocery stores, to reduce the price of eggs and milk. And the question is, what is President Trump's plan? What is he actually going to do to lower inflation? That should be the argument.
Well, it was 1.4 under him percent, and we know that it spiked to 9%, relatively historic highs over the last few decades. So President Biden has fought to get that back down. There is improvement, but people are still looking at their grocery bills now compared to 3.5 years ago. They're 20% higher. And that's a conversation that it seems isn't getting fully fleshed out, because people worry that the next time they got to fill up their car or get groceries, they're not seeing improvement. What they're seeing is 3.5 years versus the previous 4.
Well, Sharon, there's no doubt that inflation was lower before COVID, but COVID happened and inflation started to rise under President Trump and then continued to rise under President Biden. There was bipartisan spending under both presidents, and much of it good that led to the vaccines, that led to America having the record lowest unemployment in the world, that has led to America having the best recovery from inflation in the Western world. And so the question now is, how do we continue to get inflation down? And what are we going to do on housing, on child care, on taking on monopolies? The president has a clear vision. And I guess what I would love to see from President Trump is, what is he going to do in the future? How is he going to get prices down?
Well, okay, I would say he will want to take credit for the vaccine getting done on his watch on Operation Warp Speed. But let me turn to this. You've spent the weekend with a lot of big tech folks, and some of them have been quietly, some of them are openly talking about throwing support and money over to President Trump or to possible third-party spoiler RFK Jr. Puck says this: an election cycle ago, Silicon Valley Republicans had to go into witness protection to support Trump. Now an influential cohort of billionaires and quasi-billionaires are getting ready to write checks for 45. Also, Axios quoting tech investor David Sachs says, I'd say at this point, bigger disagreements with Biden than with Trump. He, by the way, is supposed to host a big dollar fundraiser in Silicon Valley this week for President Trump. What is your message to him about whether he has a better deal with Biden or Trump when it comes to tech issues?
Well, look, Silicon Valley folks are independent. They wouldn't be entrepreneurs if they weren't contrarian and independent. And our party needs to make a case that we're going to have a better vision for entrepreneurship, for investment in things like the CHIPS Act to bring semiconductors back, for investments in advanced manufacturing, for wealth generation in a modern economy across the country. And that's what this convening was. I still believe that 70, 80 to 80% of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are for President Biden. But you're right, it's not 95 or 100%. And that's why we need to do work to show that we still are the party of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Well, I know that's kept you busy this weekend, Congressman, so thanks for making time for us. Good to see you.
Thank you, Shannon.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.